Hey everyone, Drekkie here, and today I'm unboxing the Eken H8 Pro. A little while ago, I reviewed another camera from Eken, the H8R, and I loved the design of it, but the camera itself didn't perform all that well. Well, it looks like Eken might have actually taken some of my criticisms to heart, and they made a lot of changes to improve the performance of the camera, most notably using a much better processor to get real 4K video. I decided to go with the H8 Pro over the H8 Plus because it's a different image sensor than the other real 4K cameras I have on hand, so I'll be curious to see how they perform differently, but for most cases I'd recommend going for the H8 Plus because it has image stabilization, and I really highly value that. So let's open this up and see what's inside the box. I just wanted to let you know that this camera came from Banggood. I don't really think Eken wants to send me any more cameras after the last video I did for them. Alright, open it up, and let's see what's inside. Like I mentioned before, I'm glad to see that they haven't changed the design of the camera much. I really like these subtle orange highlights that they've added to it. One of my favorite parts of the original design was this LCD screen on the front. This is similar to the Firefly 7S that I'm also currently reviewing, and it just means that I can see whatever I'm doing as I'm doing it without having to take the camera off my helmet mount or my chest mount or whatever. This camera also comes with a waterproof remote, which some people will find very handy. I don't usually use them myself, but... So let's see if there's anything else under this. I think there might be some cables or something. It looks like an actual package. Oh yeah, there's some cables and some straps. Nothing abnormal. And what about the other side? Yeah, there's more. Oh look, it's an AC adapter that doesn't really work for North America. Oops. So this isn't everything included with the box. There is another little box inside of this box. And here's the bottom of it. So let's just open this up and see what's inside. Doop-a-doo, cutting things with my knife. Doop-a-doo, never give me knives, 'cause I cut myself by accident. Oh, look at that. It is jam-packed with accessories. So just to run through, it looks like there is a extra back for the camera, of course. That's probably for audio. Some standard right adapters. These awesome thumb screws that come with the Eken cameras. They're a little bit easier to turn than some of the other ones. More adapters, a back cage, clips. This is all pretty normal stuff, but I really like how everything has this orange highlight throughout. It gives the camera a little bit of a subtle design compared to some of the other cameras I've reviewed recently. That makes it stand out. Pretty nice. All in all though, it's a pretty typical package for an action camera, and you can see all these accessories laid out on the Eken sale page, so... I wonder if there's any charge in the camera. Let's see if we can turn it on. Alright, pressing the button now. Oh yeah, there we go. It is turning on. No card, obviously. Well, this is an interesting UI. This is different than any other Ambarella camera I've seen before. It's nice because if you've ever owned another Eken camera, you'll be very at home with this user interface. It's almost identical to the H8 that I previously reviewed. Let's go over to the settings here real quick and just check them out. So yeah, as I said, almost identical, as in very identical. It definitely reminds me of the previous Eken cameras, which is maybe a good thing, maybe a bad thing. One of the things that I did like about the Eken cameras compared to some of the other cams that I've reviewed though, is that the settings are pretty straightforward compared to some of the more expensive and high-end cameras that are more meant for enthusiasts. Whereas I found that the Eken cameras more, or a little bit less settings actually, in order to make them easier to use for people who don't necessarily need dozens of different video formats and resolutions or dozens of different settings. So that's something that I like about the Eken camera right away. Another thing that I'm also noticing right away about the Eken camera is that it actually beeps pretty loudly. You're not really going to hear it in the voiceover, of course, because I'm recording this separately from the camera. However, all of the other Ambarella cameras I've used to date don't beep very loud. With this camera, I can actually hear it beeping as I'm pressing the buttons, and it's in the waterproof case. So here are the resolutions, 4K, and everything else. Like I said, Eken tends to limit the options you get. In a case like this, I think it is really beneficial for a company like Eken, who is trying to appeal to a consumer base instead of an enthusiast base. It makes sense for them to have few minimal resolutions and focus on perfecting those resolutions instead of having super view or dozens of different that are not necessarily useful to an end consumer instead of an enthusiast. However, very notably, 1080p 30 is missing. So let's just go through the other settings really quick here and take a look at what else there is. As I said, it seems pretty minimal what you get to actually choose. There are lots of time-lapse settings though, at least. Anyways, that looks about it, so let's take this camera outside and see what it can do. Alright, so this was shot in 1080p 60, and as you can see, it actually looks pretty good. There's a decent amount of detail in the trees, and the color is pretty accurate. Even when I'm turning directly into the sun, it seems to hold its exposure pretty well. So let's just skip ahead this little forest part here. As I'm going through this, you'll see even in the darker and the lighter patches, it tends to do pretty well in terms of the exposure compensation. It's fairly quick. Color isn't too saturated compared to previous Eken cameras I've used, which is interesting. And when we turn around the corner here again, facing away from the sun, of course, is the best, so it looks prettiest. In terms of the audio this camera records, you can hear me when it's in the waterproof case, but it does need to be boosted a little bit. So it's not the best audio I've heard from an Ambarella camera, but it's far from the worst. So let's just check that out and see what it sounds like.
Alright, so this is just some sample footage from the Eken H8 Pro. I currently have the camera in its waterproof case, and we're just filming sitting in my car with the air conditioning on because it's ridiculously hot. From basic tests of this camera, it seems like it does a decent job of 4K, but we'll have to see during the daytime because I was shooting in pretty low light before. Anyways, hopefully this gives you a good idea of what the audio sounds like. The only thing I really feel like this camera is missing is a stabilizer, so yeah.
So here's some samples of real 4K video. As you can see, it actually doesn't look too bad. There's a decent amount of detail, and I'm surprised how good it does for using the IMX078 sensor. It's not as high-end sensor as the IMX117, so for the most part, if you can afford the little bit extra, I'd go for the H8 Plus over the H8 Pro, even without testing the Plus, just because it's that higher resolution sensor and it has the stabilized 1080p 60. But if you did buy this camera, initial tests look pretty good. I mean, I can't really find too much to fault on it. So kudos to you, Eken, for actually going and improving your cameras. Of course, I'll wait to make a final verdict on the camera until I've tested it in more situations such as low light and in the forest cycling. So until then, thank you for watching, and I hope this video gave you a bit of an idea of what the camera is like. Please follow me on social media if you haven't already done so. It's @DrekiMedia on Twitter and Instagram.